Okay, I am now recording. I'm trying to figure out how to reduce your echo. I've got a pretty good echo going on in the back there, but I don't want to mute you.
Are you on speaker at your side?
No, I'm on a headset.
Oh,
I think
so
it's
our
the speaker echo on your side.
Do you want to, we can mute and unmute, and I'll just stand by here, and when someone wants to say something, I'll unmute it.
Sure, that would be great if it works. We'll see how it works for the first question. And
Okay, I'm going to
newcomers,
mute
we don't have
now and let us know if the feedback goes away, because you
Okay,
won't be able to
great.
hear it for me to ask. So here I go.
Okay.
2, 1, mute.
Okay. All right, I am talking and it is very clear, so thank you for doing that. Sorry, it's always funny to kind of hear your own voice coming back at you in the background, so this is great. Okay, so we are going to talk through kind of the evaluation instrument itself, and I know there has been some conversation on campus about, making sure that you have the right instrument, that you're asking the right questions to get you the types of results and reports that you need. So we'll talk about all the various different kind of options that you have there, and the support that we can lend to developing those instruments, and then kind of the tools that you have for customizing at various different levels of the college, as well as based on attributes and things like that. So we'll talk through the instrument development component, and a little bit about IDEA there as well. Of course, we're going to spend some time talking about the student experience, how students interact with the site, both on mobile as well as on computer screens. We'll talk about the faculty experience, how faculty will access and experience the site. And of course, we'll spend a fair bit of time kind of talking through the various different types of reports that you would get, and the reports that you will get if you are using a homegrown instrument, as well as the kind of new reports that are available online if you're using one of the IDEA instruments. So starting
Can I
kind
ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is there a difference? You said something about a homegrown instrument or IDEA. Mm-hmm. Do you also have a question bank of questions that we could just pick the most appropriate questions and use those, or is it an either or?
If you choose to use IDEA, you have to use their instruments in full. So you can't say we want to use these 3 or 4 questions from IDEA in our custom form. If you do choose to use one of the IDEA shorter forms, we'll get to this in a minute, you can add as many custom questions as you want to that. We do also have samples, examples that may be referred to as a question bank, that we can give you examples to look at of questions that you might want to use, and you can say, yep, we want those 10. So you don't have to sit in committee and start with a blank slate, a blank sheet of paper to come up with that homegrown instrument. We can provide you with the tools that you need, or some examples, again, of questions. But if you do, again, choose to use IDEA, you have to use those instruments as is plus. You can't just pick and choose. That makes sense?
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, thanks.
Great. So in terms of kind of, just a high level perspective on what this looks like, one of the things and one of the reasons I start here is just to emphasize to you that, the goal with really everything that we do is to make it as intuitive and user-friendly and sort of as clean as is possible. So if you were a high-level administrator, somebody that has access to all of these various different things on campus, you wouldn't have to wade through various different menus. It's all sort of presented to you in a way that's very kind of front and center, and again, very intuitive. So if you're setting up users, if you're setting up administrations, if you're helping to connect to data, that here is spelled out for you pretty easily on that first page. Of course, we do also offer oodles of support in helping you to set this stuff up, and you'll have a team of folks that'll be with you through the implementation, and a team of folks that are there kind of beyond that to really guide you through the process, so you're never having to do it on your own. But once you go through that training, it becomes very easy from there. I like to talk about, this is one of the first things that we set up when we set up your course evaluation system, and it's this organizational unit chart. And the reason I like to talk about this here is because it sort of guides a number of things that we're going to talk about further on in the conversation. So when you look at this institutional unit chart, we'll customize this to the college. We will, set up as many levels as you need. Here we have an example that shows university, division, department, program. And what these levels do further down the road is it's going to tell us kind of where reporting should live, where different kind of site access or permissions to the site should live. So if you've got a chair of a department, you want to be able to see everything that falls under that department, then they kind of live at that chair at the department level. A dean of a college is going to live at the college level, and so forth, to be able to see everything that kind of falls under their purview. This organizational unit chart is also what's going to help us when we are creating evaluation instruments. It's going to help us to know where some of your questions should live. So when we talk about building a custom instrument, when we talk about building even building onto an already created instrument, you may want to add groups of questions based on college or based on program. And so the way this is laid out is going to help us to determine where, again, those custom questions should live. So in terms of kind of setting all of this up, a couple things I wanted to point out to you here. You have total flexibility in kind of how frequently you administer evaluations. So if you have shorter terms, there's this kind of example is fall 2016, but if you have parts of term that live all under fall 2016, those can have a separate administration, or those can be part of this administration. You can set up an administration just for a particular set of courses or a unit on that organization chart. But what would be typical would be to do kind of one administration at the end of each semester, and then potentially to have kind of parts of term live under that. When you're setting these up, you have a couple of choices here. You'll see there's a box kind of in the middle that says include custom instructor questions. And so every time you set up an evaluation, you do have the option of saying we want faculty to be able to add custom questions. And if you do that, they will have a place where they can go, their kind of main hub, which we'll talk about when we get to the faculty experience, that's going to let them add a couple of custom questions specific to that course section. If you choose to turn that off, you can. And then on the right-hand side, what I wanted to point out here, people always ask, when are how quickly are the reports ready? So the reports will be available within our system really within 24 hours of an administration period closing. That's 48 hours if you're using IDEA. But oftentimes what the institution will tell us is, we really don't want to release the reports until grades are submitted. And so you can set the dates here on when instructors should be notified that their reports are ready, when they should be able to log in and see their data based on when grades close or some other applicable date. And same with administrator reports. So this would be your deans and chairs who may have access to the reports before faculty, or may be after faculty, or maybe at the same time. But you can set those separately, which will dictate when folks can see the completed reports. Any questions about that?
Yes, I've got one question about this total flexibility. Does that mean that we can use the system for formative assessments, say during a term?
Good question. Good question. We do have a tool that can be used for formative assessment during the term. For this is really your end of term evaluation. So that would not be a place to set up kind of a full administration. But again, we do have a tool for formative assessment that you can use really anytime throughout the course of term. And I'll talk about that when we get to the evaluation options, or to the faculty experience. Okay, great. So of course you can kind of monitor things and edit things on an ongoing basis. You can look at your response rate. You can keep an evaluation window open a couple extra days. Maybe there was a snowstorm and campus was closed and you want to give students a few extra days. You can always, go through and edit that stuff on an ongoing basis. And you do have the ability to set up and schedule initial mailings to students as well as reminder mailings to students, and same for your instructors. So you would be able to schedule those on the dates that you wish, and they're all customizable as well. So my favorite example of a customized mailing that went out to students, a reminder that went out on Mother's Day. And it said, your mother would want you to complete your course evaluations. And supposedly that had an impact. A lot of students wound up responding. So now that Mother's Day is upon us, I like that example. So anyway, you can have it come from whoever you want, and you can have it say whatever you want. And those customized messages, I think, do help to drive the students to complete the evaluations. So let's talk about the instruments. You already sort of led me down this path a little bit, so we'll kind of further that conversation here. When you create your evaluations, you're going to have the ability to add a core set of questions. If you're doing a homegrown evaluation, you'd be able to add a core set of questions that'll be used across all of your courses. And you can also add custom questions, again, at any level on that organizational unit chart, and also based on course attributes. So if you have online courses and you want to be able to add a couple of questions to all your online courses or all your hybrid courses or all your lab courses, you get the picture. We will be able to create those categories are custom for you as well, as long as you can send us the information over with the course information about what kind of category it should fit in. We can add those custom questions based on categories, and there can be multiple categories. You know, it may be a service learning class that has an online component, and so that would have kind of two different groups of custom questions that get added based on those various attributes. That makes sense? Questions there?
Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
And you do have flexibility in the types of questions that you ask. So this is a look at what that question builder looks like. And you can do single select and multiple select and drop downs and text boxes, and you can do these matrices. You can add, instruction text and so forth. You can make these multiple pages or one page, and we can counsel you on kind of the best layout for the types of questions that you're asking. Again, something there that you don't need to go it alone on. We'll provide some guidance on that. Before an evaluation goes out, you can have a look at it, and you can see, particularly at the faculty level, the instructor may be interested in knowing, okay, for this course, how many total questions are there going to be? Because I know that it's got the experiential learning component, I know that it's got the hybrid component, so how many questions total are going to be on it, and what are the questions that we're asking? That can also help inform what custom questions they might want to ask at the course level, and also how they communicate with students. So, okay, it's going to be a 16-question evaluation. Go in. It's going to take 10 minutes. I'll give class time and so forth. But at least they can see. You can also see the scales and the alternate codes and that type of thing. We do have a tool. It's totally optional if you want to use it. But if you are using a evaluation that you're building yourself, either from your questions or from our kind of list of common questions, once you've completed what you think is your core evaluation, you can send it through this. It's like a question analysis tool. It's created by our data science team, and it helps you to look at the different kind of themes that you're covering in your evaluation. So you may, throw a bunch of questions together that you think are interesting, then you run it through the analyzer and you say, gosh, we emphasized a lot on the student here and not very much on the course. Maybe we want to go back and ask some more course questions or what have you. So it's just kind of a neat tool that helps to give you a better sense for, is this really what we were hoping to get at, or are there some areas that we didn't touch on enough that we probably should? Again, that's an optional item there.
Can I ask a question about that real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something where you have pre-identified the themes, or is that something where you let the data show the themes through something like factor analysis?
Yeah, it's based on it looks at, we've built this model. It's a proprietary model, but it's built on like what verbs you're using, what nouns and verbs, I guess. So course, if it mentions course, or if it mentions I feel that I have done this, then it's going to put it as a student. I don't know exactly, all the analytics and all the words that they're, trigger words that they're using on the background, but they've analyzed, like, I think it was, and Deborah, you might have more knowledge on this than I do. I think they looked at like every question that was being asked in the platform to date when they built the model. And then they sort of categorized those manually and then refined the model from there. Like, is this a student type question or an instructor type question? So it's not on the collected data at all, but on the questions being asked.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this partnership with the Idea Center. So Campus Labs is currently the exclusive technology partner of IDEA. And what that means is that on a moving forward basis, all of the institutions that are using the IDEA student ratings of instruction will be asked at some point to use the Campus Labs platform to do that, and to migrate from the existing IDEA online system to the Campus Labs platform. And there's a number of reasons that they made that decision. one of them is that they just couldn't keep up with the needs of their member institutions in terms of being able to get reporting back more quickly, getting reporting to be sort of more intuitive and presented in a easier to interpret manner. We have a mobile platform for this. There were just a number of things that they said, we just can't do this anymore. And so they went out in search of a partner and they selected Campus Labs. So again, if you do choose to continue using IDEA, you can do that in this platform. You do not have to do that in this platform. And one of the nice things about that is it's not an all or nothing situation. So you could, in theory, have some units using IDEA and other units not using IDEA. Or you could, for a year or two, try out one of the kind of newer options with IDEA and then later decide to move off of that and not have to change platforms. So there's a lot of flexibility into kind of when and how you might want to use IDEA. Maybe you'd want to use IDEA once every other year instead of every year, or once every couple of years. So, but it gives you some flexibility in that. One thing to mention, I know historically you've been using the IDEA diagnostic evaluation, which is what was formerly known as the long form, and that was 47 questions. It's actually a little bit shorter now in the new platform. It was like the first time in 40 years that they went through and said, does this evaluation still make sense, for the era that we're living in, I guess. And so they made it a little bit more brief. It's 40 questions now. They merged a couple of questions. They got rid of a couple of questions. They updated a couple of the themes. So the full diagnostic evaluation is a little bit shorter. It's 40 questions. It still incorporates elements of student learning or student perceptions of learning, student reported learning happening in the classroom, and elements of the teaching methods employed in the classroom. What formerly was known as the short form was what is now known as the Learning Essentials form. And that focuses specifically on the learning objectives and on student self-reported learning in the classroom, or making progress on learning in the classroom. So there is now a form called Learning Essentials, which is the old short form, but it's shorter than the old short form. And there is another short form option, which is the Teaching Essentials, and that focuses specifically on teaching methods in the classroom. And I think I might have sent a link to Wendy to the samples of each of these instruments, but I'll send it to you again after this so you have a chance to kind of look at the various different options there. But any one of these or all of these would be available to you if you so desire in this platform. Questions about that?
Can you give a sample of what a teaching essential question would be?
Yeah, I meant to print those out so I had the questions in front of me. Deborah, you got one on the top of your head?
Well, we'll actually be looking at some of them when we look at the feedback tool, so we'll be able to see 5 of them when we look at that tool. But something in this area would be my instructor, oh no, now that I'm put on the spot, I can't come up with one.
My instructor helped me find answers to my own questions,
Yes.
I think is one of them. My instructor showed an interest in me and my work, something to that effect. What are the other ones from feedback?
That's fine. That's fine. We're going to look at it, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, okay. All right, good, sorry. And then
how many questions are these 2 short forms?
The Learning Essentials, I want to say, is 13 questions. And the Teaching Essentials is probably around the same. I'll get you those exact numbers, but they're in the teens.
Yeah, I think it's 17 and 13, something close to that.
17, okay. And then regardless, if you choose one of those shorter forms or the diagnostic evaluation, again, you do still have the opportunity to add customized questions in the same way that you would with a custom form. You can add as many custom questions as you wish, and you can add those to the core instrument for all of your courses, or you can add those based on institutional unit, or you can add those based on course section attributes. So again, with the IDEA forms, you can't take out any questions, but you can add in the same way you could to your homegrown forms. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the student experience here. So I mentioned, one of the reasons IDEA had chosen Campus Labs as a partner was because they really knew they needed a mobile-ready solution, and our course evaluations platform already had a mobile solution, a mobile-friendly solution. Really, everything that we do is we're kind of founded on a mobile principle. So everything we do is mobile-friendly for students, for faculty. When that means that the evaluations can be completed anywhere. So we strongly encourage that your instructors give class time for students to complete the evaluation. It really is kind of the biggest predictor of your response rates, whether class time has been devoted to completing the evaluations. I know some instructors say, come on, I'm finally getting this class time back, now that it's online. But, if you want to get those high response rates, it does help to have a captive audience. But if that doesn't, fit into the instructor's calendar, or if a student happens to miss that class that day, or you ran out of time in class, the student can complete it anywhere. So waiting in line for Starbucks, or taking a break from studying, whatever the case might be, they can take it on their smartphone. So how they'll be notified about the evaluation is they will get an email. They're going to get one email per administration period, not one email per course, that says it's time to complete your evaluations. And there will be a link in that email that directs them to a page where it's going to be obviously branded Inverhills, not Hometown University, but they'll be prompted to enter their campus credentials or campus login ID and password. And then they'll get to a page that looks like what you're seeing on the left here. It's going to show them all of the courses they're enrolled in for that term. And then it's going to provide a link to start the evaluation for that course. So you can see here, there's one that says start and there's one that says continue. So if they did start it and in class and maybe not get through it but want to continue it later, they can come back and click the continue button to complete the evaluation up until the window for the administration period has closed. If they want to complete all their evaluations at one time, in theory, they could do that. They can also see any that they have submitted. You'll see there's kind of two tabs here, so they can see what's still open and they can see what's been submitted. And if you set up reminders, which we encourage you to do, when the reminder goes out, the reminder will go out to any student who still has at least one evaluation that has not been submitted. And again, they'll get one reminder per administration period or per reminder window rather than one per course.
Hey,
Really?
Joe,
Oh, yeah.
is this one, this is Wendy, does this one have an opt-out tool then where students can say, stop sending these to me, stop sending me reminders, don't talk to me?
If they just don't want to complete evaluations at all?
Correct.
Do we have that, Deborah? I don't think so.
Good.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No, that wouldn't be an option in this tool.
Yeah, okay.
No, I think that's what you need is an opt-out. Yeah, so let's subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, typically the evaluation window is maybe 2 weeks. So if they get 3 emails in 2 weeks telling them to do something that's, useful to them and to other students and to your faculty in the future, then so be it, right?
They can opt out, but do we get to set how many reminders per administration period that we might want to send it? And is that customizable by course or is that per administration?
Yep, it's per administration.
But we can determine 1 reminder, 2 reminders, etc.
Exactly. Yep, you can determine how many and on what days and what the content of the message is.
All right.
Good.
Do we have the ability to go in and physically remove students from the population?
Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Deborah, but you can go in and you can see all the students that it's going out to, and then you can kind of just uncheck a button if you want that student removed, or actually you can kind of delete the student. Correct, Deborah? Did I get that?
Sure, we don't technically call it deleting students, since once you import students into our system, we keep them there. But if you wanted to unenroll them from a course section, you could do that manually.
Okay. All right. So what you're seeing here is what the student will see. They can, complete the evaluation on their computer. That would be the view on the left. They can complete the evaluation on their smartphone. That would be the view on the right. But it really does present just like this. So it's, it's a it's a it's a look that the students will be very familiar with and very comfortable with, and hopefully can get through, pretty quickly and easily, completing all of the questions. So faculty experience has some similarities in that, particularly when it comes time for reports, the faculty are going to get a message, again, customizable message, and it'll go out on the date when the reports are ready. That's going to say, your reports are ready, go ahead and log in and have a look at them. And there will be a link at the bottom, you can see here, where they will go. They'll be prompted again for their campus credentials, and then they'll have their own sort of faculty hub here. And so on this faculty hub, they're going to be able to see all of the courses that they're teaching in that term. They can toggle at the top here, see it says change term. They can toggle between this term and any past terms where we have evaluation data. They can see, they can actually go in here anytime, even when results aren't ready, and they can go see their old data, and they can also see for an existing course, when the evaluation is going to be sent out. They can kind of look at their roster. If you're giving them the ability to add custom questions, they'd be able to do that here. And we'll get to this in a minute, but if you were using IDEA, they could go here to complete their faculty information form, which is now known as the objective selection form. So everything happens from this one faculty hub. And what's neat about this is that URL that they're going to go to, it never changes. Same with the student URL, it never changes. So the only thing that changes is what presents to you once you're logged in. So back to the student experience for a second, that URL, you can post it anywhere. It can be, a link from your campus portal. It can be a link from D2L. It can be a link, it can be on a sign around campus. The instructor can write it up on the board when they say it's time to take course evaluations. And then the only thing that changes is once the student is logged in, it's going to change for their experience for that term for the courses they're enrolled in. So nobody has to remember URLs or send out custom links or anything like that. Same one every term. It just changes the view here depending on the user and the term that's in question. So for our instructors, if results are ready, they can click into their results. This is kind of just a quantitative view of one course results. They can also see a qualitative view that has the student comments here at the bottom. Another view that they have would be a summary of all of the courses that they're teaching in that term. And you can see they're kind of laid out course by course here. So you can see any trends. So in this case, there's, one question, 3 courses. Okay, do I seem to all of my students across all my courses seem to be saying the same things? Or, does my 8 a.m. course seem to say things that are different than my 2 p.m. course, right? So I think it's really interesting to be able to see that data kind of side by side for a given term and see where the trends are. Kind of a zoomed in view of that. You'll also, as a faculty member, have the ability to look at what we call a segment comparison report. So this is this unit of a course or this course section, and you can compare it really anywhere on that organizational unit chart we talked about at the beginning. So you can look at this course section versus other sections of the same course. You can look at it versus other courses in my discipline or other courses in my college or, courses across the entire institution. So you have the ability, there's a kind of a drop down here that toggles between the comparison group. And then it'll tell you question by question whether your results were similar or much higher or much lower than the other sections that you're comparing to. You can also see some trends over time. So here we're looking at if you're using the same questions consistently, you can look at on a question by question basis, how did all of my students kind of rate this particular question throughout the time that we have data in here. So from spring 2016 to fall 2017, you can see the trends there. And then if you click into an individual question, you're able to see kind of a drilled in view of that, which shows the changes over the semesters. And if you scroll over one of those bars, it's just going to give you a little bit more data about the course that's in question. So, okay, oh yeah, this was my Writing 3 course. Here was the course mean. Here's how many students out of the total enrollment that completed the evaluation, and so forth. So back to that faculty experience landing page here, a couple other things that your faculty would be able to do from here. Again, if you're using IDEA, this is where you'd be able to select the learning objectives, to select the importance of those learning objectives that are being evaluated either in the Learning Essentials form or the full diagnostic evaluation. And you can select which are important or essential. That's all going to look somewhat familiar to you. And then you also have the option of auto-filling those learning objectives, so to take some of the burden off of the faculty each term to complete those, especially if it's a course that's been being taught by multiple instructors, but the learning objectives are the same across the course. You might want to auto-fill those. Or if it's the learning objectives were established by committee rather than by the instructor, you might want to autofill those. So this is an option that makes it so that you don't have to go in course by course and select those every time. So if you're using IDEA, of course, you get some additional reports. So this report is the new look for that old PDF hard copy that you used to get. So essentially all the same data is here. It just is a little more dynamic. So you can kind of interact with the report in different ways. And I think it's just a little bit more visually appealing, but also, just a little bit more intuitive on first glance than that old PDF report used to be. So you'll see a summary number here. You see your progress on relevant objectives. You see the summative questions, which were the question that relate to overall excellence of instructor and overall excellence of course. And so that's kind of the average of those two scores. So you can toggle here between the adjusted score and the raw score. Again, you'll remember that the adjusted score is factored based on student perceptions of the difficulty of the course and some student kind of characteristics or how likely the student, how hard of a worker the student is and that type of thing. You can also compare to the full IDEA database, the IDEA discipline database, or your institution's database, and that's a toggle too. Under the relevant objectives here, you can see kind of the breakdown for all of those objectives that the instructor selected as important or essential. And you can see, the percentage of students that rated you a 4 or a 5 versus anything lower. And the T-score here in the middle. On the formative tab, we're looking at the teaching essentials or the teaching methods. So this is something you'd have access to if you were using the full diagnostic evaluation or the teaching essentials evaluation. And here's the questions that you were asking about. So the teaching essentials looks at things like, did the instructor help the student find ways to answer their own questions, demonstrate the importance of the subject matter? I'll let you kind of reflect on those for a minute before I advance the slide, but you can see what the kind of core teaching methods they're looking at are. And then based on the student response, yeah.
We have a question.
Sure.
You said that the questions are run against like a profile of the student, like how hard they work.
Well, there's a few questions that are asked. I don't know if I have the slide in here. Shoot, I don't. There's a few questions that they ask of students on the diagnostic evaluation that helps them to create the adjusted scores. And one of the questions says, I would have taken this course regardless of who was teaching it. Another one says, I tend to work harder than other students. One of them says, I felt adequately prepared for this course. So it looks at kind of the perceived difficulty of the course and the student sort of work habits. And that's how it creates the adjusted score. So if students are in a course that they think is super hard versus a course that's really easy, they have a tendency to rate the instructor a little bit lower. And that's, I think, been proven over time, and that's why IDEA has built that into the adjusted score, because if a student says this course is just too hard and I wasn't prepared for it at all, then you'll sort of take their rating and look at it a little bit differently than a student who says, yeah, I was prepared for this and I work hard and that type of thing. So those contextual questions are what help IDEA come up with the adjusted score. I can send you a list of what those questions are and follow up too. I thought I had a slide in here about that, but I think I took it out. Just writing myself a note. So on the
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
The feedback that you're talking about being formative assessment, I just want to make sure I understand. It sounds like you're asking questions that might be measuring skills that a teacher might be using in a formative context, but you're asking those questions at the end of the semester. Is that correct? As opposed to doing a survey in the middle of the semester to measure something about teaching practices in the middle where changes can be made at the end of the semester.
Yeah, you got that right. I always wonder why they call this formative too, and that's something that came over from IDEA. I think it's because there is some faculty development components to this element of it. So there's the questions related to the teaching methods, and then the IDEA system will propose actions like, oh, you're doing a really good job of this, you should keep doing what you're doing. Or they may say you should consider doing more of this. And so I think when they say formative, what they're saying is that there is the ability for faculty to kind of learn from this element of the evaluation, and it provides suggestions for how and things to do. So it says, for example, here, you did a really good job of this, but in case you want to learn more about it, you click to learn more from IDEA. Or this says, well, you might consider doing more, spending more time demonstrating the importance and significance of the subject matter, and then it links off to the IDEA note that talks about demonstrating the importance of the subject matter. This one is found ways to help students answer their own questions. So while yes, it's not formative assessment in any means, and it's not happening throughout the course of the term, I think because there's some sort of developmental component to it, that's why they call it formative.
Thank you.
But that's the IDEA language. Yeah. So this is what we really reference more as the formative feedback, and this is a tool that we call feedback, and it is intended to gain real-time feedback from students. So the idea behind feedback is that it could be administered to students as frequently as at the end of every class session. It is a fixed set of questions. There are 7 of those teaching essentials type questions that are asked, and then there's one question at the end that says, did you understand the material covered in class today? And the idea, of course, being, we want to just get a quick pulse of students. Are they understanding what we are teaching? Are there particular units that give students more trouble than others? And if so, why? Or do we need to go back and cover the material again that we covered in this one class that many students reported not having a lot of success on? So you can see the results over time. You can see these kind of plotted out every day that you set up one of these feedback sessions. You'll have the results kind of plotted on this graph. And then across the top here, you can see where it says understood the course material, that last question on the bottom. And, any area that, well, there's kind of a lot of no here on March 17th on St. Patrick's Day. What was going on that day that, students weren't getting the material, and do we need to go back and do it again? So this is the tool that we use, again, for that kind of formative, ongoing type of assessment. All right, there's some administrator reports as well. Of course, as an administrator, you're also going to be able to see all of the reports that faculty see. So be able to see the faculty reports for everybody that kind of falls under your purview. You'd be able to see the kind of list of each instructor. You can sort by first name or last name. You can search for your instructor. You can see the individual course reports, and you can see those summary reports that we looked at. You can see the qualitative comments on any questions that are asked across the institution. Any instructor-specific questions that the instructor adds are not immediately available through this view to administrators, but certainly faculty can choose to share that data with their supervisor or otherwise if it becomes relevant. A lot of times for promotion and tenure conversations, we see instructors kind of printing out their reports and sharing them with their supervisors. But again, kind of the standard qualitative and quantitative comments would be available to administrators. And then administrators will get some additional reports. So this one is kind of a neat report. It's called a question mean analysis report. Let me see if I can zoom in on this for you a little bit here. But it shows you all of the questions that you had asked kind of across all of your evaluations. And then it gives you a mean, standard deviation, and it tells you the number of classes that you asked these questions in. So if you have core questions, it's probably going to be asked of all of your courses, but you can see, it shows you all your various question sets. So maybe the business school question set was only asked in 10 of these 22 courses or what have you. And then if you click into the number of classes, it's going to show you the list of each of the classes where that question was asked, and it'll show you the mean and the standard deviation for that course as well and who the instructor was. So, I'd like to point out if there are one or two areas or themes that are really most important to your department in a given year, and you just want to see, who's doing really well, and where the answers to those questions, where the scores were really high, you can kind of dig in again on a question by question basis and see, oh yeah, instructor Kerchak was, did an unbelievable job in this area, 5 out of 5 every time. What can she teach the rest of our team about that theme? So it's kind of tapping into the best of your team to educate others, or to do, to set up professional development opportunities for the kind of the rest of your team. So anyway, I think the question mean analysis report is kind of neat and kind of fun to play with, particularly for the data geeks among us to be able to really drill in on a question by question basis. There is also, of course, the ability to look in at response rates across the institution to be able to say, okay, when the administration is open, what was our response? What response rate do we want to get, and what courses are falling below that? And then you can maybe reach out to those instructors and say, hey, your response rate is a little lower than we had hoped at this point. There's still a week left. Don't forget to give class time, to complete the evaluation or something like that. So it does give you the opportunity to monitor those on an ongoing basis, and then after the administration has closed. This is an additional report you'd get if you were using IDEA. And it is what is referred to as the unit summary report. And this is something that used to be, if you were using IDEA, that you could specifically request and pay for a unit summary report. Now it's just we deliver that to anybody that's using IDEA. And for whatever kind of level you live on that organizational chart, your unit summary report is going to encompass the areas that sort of fall below you. So it's going to look at what learning objectives were we selecting, if we were selecting learning objectives on the diagnostic evaluation. On the corollary to that is what learning objectives were we not selecting, and should we have been? What were our priorities in terms of teaching methods? What's kind of been going well as a unit, and what are areas for development as a unit? So it summarizes a number of different areas for those individual units as well. And that is kind of the platform and the reporting in a nutshell. I mentioned a couple of times, and I'll mention it again, that you would have the ability to work with a consultant or a team of consultants that would help you set up the site and set up the exchange of data, and also to kind of support you throughout. So at any point if you had questions. And those folks can also help with the development of the instrument or the customization of the instruments, as well as, we've got functional and technical teams. Any questions that you have, or stumbling blocks. Sorry, Deborah sent me a note here. Stumbling blocks that you run into, you can always call them, and we will support you. So, and then they also have, suggestions even just on kind of change management, communicating with faculty trainings, and that sort of thing. Our consultants have kind of seen the successes and the challenges of a lot of different institutions, and so they can kind of help you think about what pitfalls to avoid and what what some kind of best practices are for rolling out a new system on campus. So our service is a big part of what we offer here in addition to the product. Any other questions?
I'm wondering, you said IDEA is already using this and it's going to merge into it entirely. We currently get PDFs, so when will that stop happening? I guess that's what I'm like. If we do nothing, when will that start happening?
We don't don't have a contract with idea past this year.
But I mean, if we continue forward.
Like
Yeah.
how long are we planning to? So,
Good question. So you're getting the PDFs now because you're using the IDEA online system. So IDEA is encouraging everybody to migrate off of the IDEA online system and onto this Campus Labs platform. Getting these reports that we just looked at in the format that we just looked at would necessitate moving to this platform. And then you will get the reports. IDEA has not set a sort of a drop dead date on when they're going to turn off the old IDEA online system. I think they had hoped that that was going to happen by this fall, but the reality is that there are many institutions that just haven't been ready for one reason or another to make the move to this platform. So in some ways, it's that's up to you to decide when or if that would happen.
I have a question for you about the administration from the student perspective. One of the things we thought we saw was that this can be embedded into D2L. Is that the case, or was that something that we misread?
Yeah, Deborah, would you mind speaking to the D2L integration?
Sure, yeah. So what we have available for you is the ability for you to put a link in D2L, and when the student clicks on that link, it will redirect them into our system, into the student experience, but in a single sign-on fashion, so that the students won't need to sign into our product as well, since they're already signed into your LMS.
So
Great, and are there sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so it doesn't, live inside D2L and maybe the way that you're picturing, but it is to the student, it's sort of a seamless experience because they're going to link to it from within D2L and they're not going to be prompted to log in again. They're just going to be presented with those evaluations.
Great, and are there ways to keep the students away from their D2L content if they haven't completed the evaluation?
So I have heard of some campuses attempting to do that. We don't offer any, built-in capabilities for that to happen, but your IT team on your side may be able to do something where, we have an API available that would allow you to see which students have completed and have not completed their evaluations. So some campuses have used that API to do different things on campus. So that you may be able to make that an option, but it would involve some work from your IT team.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what Deborah is talking about there, we have some schools use the carrot and some schools use the stick, right? So that API that has all of the information about which students have completed or not completed the evaluations. Some schools will say, okay, if you complete the evaluations, you get access to your grades, 2 days before the rest of the student population. And so they're able to, again, it's sort of the onus, unfortunately, is on the campus to do that and the campus IT to do that, but you will have the opportunity to do so based on the list of students who've completed the evaluation. So you can, we've heard of people doing grades release early or football tickets or, where there's a big sports team or that kind of access to the courses.
And then is there an opportunity to do paper assessment, pencil and paper for any students?
Are you doing that with IDEA currently? Just curious.
No.
Okay.
yes,
Yes? We are?
yes. We are doing it currently for our concurrent enrollment classes, which are held in the high schools because of multiple schedules and the different kind of semester times that are involved with those. We are doing those currently paper pencil.
Okay. Yeah, and we've been working with IDEA on that very question because there are a number of institutions that use IDEA that have been doing paper and pencil as well as the online. Campus Labs does not offer a paper solution. So if you were doing a homegrown kind of build it yourself custom evaluation, it's not a service that we provide. If you were to continue using IDEA, all signs are pointing to that they are going to allow folks to continue to do paper and online in tandem. So that it's just that they process the paper on their end. It's not something that Campus Labs does. The only limitation would be that kind of the paper reports and the online reports in the short term would be separate. So you'd still get a PDF for anything that's done in paper. You'd get online reports for anything that's done online. Our hope is that in the future, if enough people really want to stick with paper, that we'd be able to have kind of an import function where we can get the paper-based data into this platform. My guess is we're at least a year away from that happening.
My thought in watching this is that we could, I think the upload and the scheduling might be easier on this platform than what we're currently doing with the Idea Legacy system.
Definitely.
Much of an issue because we have to be uploading these different rosters of students, these different high schools on different schedules, but I don't think that that's probably going to be as big a burden as it is right now.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the mobile friendly probably solves some of the issue there too. Okay, good. Any other questions?
Well, we'll have a question about pricing at some point, but we can do that. Well, can you tell me what the basis for pricing is? Is it FYE? Is it?
Yep, it's FTE. So it's like a band. So we don't say it's X dollars per student, but it is based on your total FTE, kind of which size band do you fit in, and then it's a flat fee. The fees are a little bit different whether you're using IDEA or not using IDEA. So that's something I can share with you both. And we can, talk about whether, which avenue you want to pursue or some combination of the two, and what that might do to the pricing as well. But yeah, we can talk about that and follow up.
Great.
I wanted to clarify in the feedback that you could do as frequently as every class period. Did you say that there was no customization in there?
At present, there is no customization. That's correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And can you speak to the ADA compliance of the evaluation?
Yeah, and Deborah, you can kind of jump in here, but all of our evaluations have been, we run them through screen readers. So they are all, available to be kind of read through screen readers and completed, by students with vision impairments, which I assume what you're talking about. We have a number of schools that have kind of run it through their own testing, and have had success with it. I had a large public institution that I worked with last year that this was a big issue, and they had a whole kind of department committed to it, and they ran it through their kind of pretty rigorous testing, and continued to move forward with the platform. So I think that speaks to that it does work.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm seeing a bunch of people who don't have questions. Do we have any more questions?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you all so much for spending your afternoon with us at this busy time of year. And if you do have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly, or to direct them to Wendy or Barb, and they can send them back to me. And we will follow up about pricing and anything else that comes up between now and then.
Great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, will you send us the recording?
Oh, yeah. You got it.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank
We have a
you.
lot of people who aren't here who will want to take a look. So thank you.
Sure thing.